Commander Sarah floated through the empty corridors of the Titan Station shipyard. The massive facility orbited a dying red star at the edge of human space. Most people called this place the graveyard, preferred to think of it as a museum of human dreams that never quite worked out. The station held dozens of old ships. Some were too expensive to build. Others used technology that military leaders thought was useless. A few were just too strange for the regular Navy to understand. Had been stuck here for 3 years, watching over these forgotten vessels like a caretaker in a cemetery. She stopped at the observation deck and looked out at the ships floating in the void. Each one told a story of human ambition. The experimental stealth frigate that worked too well and disappeared its own crew. The mining vessel that could eat asteroids but gave everyone radiation poisoning. The transport ship designed to carry 10,000 colonists but made them all violently sick during space travel. And then there was the big one. The UES Prometheus sat in the center of the formation like a metal mountain. 400 meters long and built like a fortress, it looked nothing like modern warships. Where current vessels were sleek and curved, the Prometheus was all angles and thick armor. Its hull was gray and ugly, covered with strange bumps and ridges that served purposes only its builders remembered. Had read the files on the Prometheus many times. 20 years ago, the best human engineers had built it as the next generation of warship. They wanted to create something that could fight when everything else failed. The military brass took one look at it and called it a waste of resources. Too slow, they said. Too expensive. Too primitive compared to the elegant ships other species were building. So they mothballed it and sent it here to rust. Pushed herself along the corridor toward her office. She had paperwork to finish and supply reports to file. The graveyard was quiet work, which suited her fine. After what happened at the Battle of Station, quiet was exactly what she needed. The communication panel in her office was blinking when she arrived. Frowned. Nobody called the graveyard unless something was seriously wrong. She activated the screen and saw Admiral Martinez's tired face appear. "Commander," he said without greeting, "we have a situation." Straightened in her chair, Martinez looked like he had not slept in days. His usually perfect uniform was wrinkled, and his eyes were red with exhaustion. "What kind of situation, sir?" "The kind that might end human civilization," Martinez said. "The hegemony empire has broken through our defense lines. Their third armada is heading directly for Earth." Felt her stomach drop. The hegemony empire controlled half the galaxy. Their ships were fast, powerful, and crewed by warriors who had conquered dozens of species. If they were moving on Earth, humanity was in serious trouble. "How long do we have?" she asked. 72 hours, maybe less. They have 200 ships, including battle cruisers and dreadnoughts. Our main fleet is scattered across 3 sectors. The second fleet is fighting pirates near the rim. The first fleet is escorting colony ships through hostile space. We have some patrol ships near Earth, but nothing that can stop an armada. Did quick math in her head. Even if the scattered fleets turned around immediately, they could not reach Earth in time. The hegemony would arrive first, and Earth's orbital defenses would not last long against 200 warships. "What are my orders, sir?" Martinez was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with something had never heard from him before: desperation. "You have access to some of our experimental vessels. I know most of them do not work properly, but if there is anything in that graveyard that can fight, we need it." Looked through her office window at the floating ships outside. Most were incomplete or broken. Some were dangerous to their own crews. A few might work for short periods before their experimental systems failed. Then her eyes stopped on the Prometheus. "Sir, there is one ship here that might help, the UES Prometheus. It is fully functional, just different." "Different how?" Called up the files on her computer. The technical specifications filled her screen with numbers that seemed impossible. The Prometheus was heavy where modern ships were light. It was slow where they were fast. It used old-fashioned kinetic weapons instead of modern energy beams. Everything about it seemed backward. The designers built it using human engineering philosophy instead of copying alien designs. It has thick armor instead of energy shields, projectile weapons instead of plasma cannons, a massive reactor that military analysts thought was wasteful. Martinez leaned forward. Can it fight? According to the specs, it was designed to fight when surrounded and outnumbered. The builders assumed that enemy ships would have energy weapons and shields like everyone else in the galaxy uses. And our ships do not. Smiled grimly. No, sir. We shield technology from the energy weapons from the vegan republic. We built our fleet to fight like everyone else fights, but the Prometheus was built to fight the way only humans fight. Martinez was quiet for a moment. Could see him thinking, weighing options that all seemed bad. How many crew does it need? Minimum crew is 50. I have 37 people on this station, mostly engineers and technicians. We would be understaffed, but the ship was designed for automation. Commander, Martinez said slowly, I am not ordering you to do this. What you are describing is a suicide mission. One experimental ship against 200 enemy vessels. The smart thing to do is evacuate the station and run. Looked out at the Prometheus again. It floated in the starlight like a sleeping giant. Ugly, brutal, and completely human in its stubborn refusal to be elegant. Admiral, she said, my grandfather helped design that ship. He always said that humans do not build pretty things. We build things that work when everything else breaks. Martinez nodded slowly. Then God help us all, Commander, wake it up. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Stellar Dominion. The massive dreadnought was over a kilometer long and bristled with the most advanced weapons in the hegemony arsenal. Around it, 200 warships moved in perfect formation through hyperspace toward the human. Was proud of his fleet. The Third Armada had never lost a battle. They had crushed the rebellion on Altair Prime in 3 days. They had broken the Vegan Republic's main fleet in less than an hour. Now they would finish what other hegemony forces had started and eliminate the human threat once and for all. The humans had been a minor annoyance for decades. Their small fleets interfered with hegemony expansion, protecting weaker species who should have been conquered long ago. But human ships were nothing special. They used technology and standard tactics, had fought human vessels before and found them unimpressive. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we will reach the edge of the human system in 6 minutes. Nodded. Intelligence reports showed that Earth's main defenses were scattered across the galaxy. A few patrol ships orbited the planet, but nothing that could threaten his armada. This would be a quick victory. Signal all ships, he ordered. Standard attack formation. Battle cruisers will eliminate the orbital stations while destroyers handle any civilian traffic. I want this system secure within 2 hours. The bridge crew responded with military precision, had trained them well over the years. They had served together through dozens of battles and conquered systems throughout the galaxy. The hyperspace warning sounded. Felt the familiar slight shift as the Armada dropped back into normal space at the edge of the Sol system. Stars appeared on the main screen, including the small yellow star that warmed the human. Tactical report, commanded. Scanning now, sir. The officer bent over his instruments. I show minimal military presence. 3 patrol ships near the 4th planet, 2 more near the asteroid belt, and 1 contact directly ahead. Looked at the tactical display. A single red dot hung in space between his fleet and Earth. Just 1 ship all alone. Identify the contact. Unknown class, Admiral. The ship appears to be human, but I have never seen this design before. It is much smaller than our vessels, maybe 400 meters. Very blocky construction, lots of armor plating. Studied the image on his screen. The human ship looked ancient compared to his sleek vessels. Where hegemony ships were smooth and graceful, this one was all ugly angles and thick metal. It reminded him of primitive warships from centuries ago, before modern technology made such crude designs unnecessary. Is it transmitting any signals? None, sir. It appears to be drifting. Almost laughed. One old human ship against his entire armada. Either the humans were completely desperate or completely insane, possibly both. Admiral, his communications officer, spoke up. The human ship is moving. It is positioning itself directly in our path. Now did laugh. One ship thinks it can stop 200. These humans have more courage than sense. He considered his options. The smart military choice was to ignore the single ship and continue toward Earth, but was curious about this strange vessel. His intelligence officers would want to study it, and a quick victory would boost crew morale before the main battle. Signal Destroyer Squadron 7, he ordered. Eliminate that ship. Make it quick and clean. I want the crew to see how easily human resistance crumbles. 6 sleek destroyers broke away from the main formation. Each one was larger than the human ship, with powerful plasma weapons and strong energy shields. Destroying one primitive vessel should take only minutes. Watched on his tactical display as the destroyers approached their target. The human ship made no attempt to run or call for help. It simply hung in space, waiting. Strange, his tactical officer muttered. I am reading unusual energy signatures from the human vessel. Their power output is much higher than expected for a ship that size. Probably an overloaded reactor, said. Desperate humans trying to make their old ship look more dangerous than it is. The destroyer squadron reached weapons range and opened fire. 6 concentrated plasma beams lanced through space toward the human ship, expected to see it vaporize instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The plasma beams struck the human ship's hull and simply disappeared, not absorbed by shields, not deflected by armor, but dissipated as if the energy was being bled away somehow. The target remained completely intact. Watt stared at his screen. Report. Unknown, sir. Our weapons are having no effect. The human ship appears to have some kind of advanced ablative armor. The plasma energy is being dispersed through controlled hull destruction. Before could respond, the human ship fired back. No energy beams appeared on his sensors. No plasma bolts or particle weapons. Instead, his tactical officer reported something that made no sense. Projectile weapons, Admiral. The humans are firing solid metal. Saw 3 bright flashes on his display. Then 3 of his destroyers simply vanished. Not destroyed by explosions or torn apart by energy weapons, but wiped away as if they had never existed. Impossible, he whispered. His tactical officer's voice was shaking. Sir, those projectiles were moving at significant fractions of light speed. The kinetic energy release was equivalent to antimatter explosions. Felt cold fear creep up his spine. In all his years of commanding warships, he had never seen anything like this. The humans had built something that his advanced fleet could not understand. The 3 remaining destroyers in Squadron 7 tried to retreat, but the human ship fired again. 2 more destroyers died instantly. The last one managed to activate its hyperspace drive and escape, but not before transmitting detailed sensor readings back to the flagship. The bridge of the Stellar Dominion was completely silent. 200 of the galaxy's best warships faced a single human vessel that had just destroyed 5 destroyers without taking any damage itself. Looked at the tactical display showing the lone human ship. It had not moved from its position. It was still waiting, as if daring him to attack. All ships, he said slowly, concentrate fire on that vessel, full power. I want every weapon in the fleet aimed at that target. Sir, his tactical officer said carefully, if one ship can do this much damage, what are we really facing? did not answer. He was beginning to understand that this was not going to be the easy victory he had planned. The humans had built something new, something his empire had never encountered before. Something that changed everything. Commander Sarah gripped her command chair as 200 alien warships turned their weapons toward the Prometheus. The main screen showed a wall of enemy vessels stretching across space, their hulls gleaming with deadly energy. "All weapons charged and ready," reported Lieutenant Torres from the engineering station. "Defensive systems online. Reactor output at maximum." Nodded. Around her, 37 volunteers worked at stations designed for a crew 3 times their size. They were engineers, mechanics, and technicians who had volunteered to wake a sleeping giant. None of them were trained naval officers, but they were human. That would have to be enough. "Incoming fire," the tactical officer shouted. Space erupted in brilliant light as 200 ships fired at once. Energy beams from every direction converged on the Prometheus like the focused wrath of angry gods. Plasma bolts, particle beams, and fusion missiles created a firestorm that should have reduced any ship to glowing vapor. The Prometheus shook as the weapon struck its hull, but the ancient warship held together. Watched her damage reports with amazement. The ablative armor was working exactly as designed. Each energy blast burned away a thin layer of specially designed plating, dissipating the weapon's power through controlled destruction. What should have been instant death became manageable heat and radiation. "Hull integrity holding at 92%, Torres reported with disbelief in his voice. "The armor is soaking up everything they throw at us." Smiled grimly. Her grandfather would have been proud. Human engineers had spent decades studying energy weapons used by every species in the galaxy. They had designed the Prometheus's armor to defeat all of them. "Return fire," she ordered. "Full spread all targets." The Prometheus's rail guns came alive. Unlike the elegant energy weapons favored by advanced civilizations, these were brutally simple devices. Magnetic coils accelerated tungsten rods to incredible speeds using the ship's massive reactor. The projectiles had no guidance systems, no sophisticated targeting computers. They were just chunks of metal moving fast enough to punch through anything. Watched the tactical display as 24 rail gun rounds streaked toward the enemy fleet. The alien ships tried to intercept them with point defense systems designed to stop missiles and energy bolts. But the simple metal rods were too small and too fast for their sensors to track properly. 16 hegemony ships died in the first volley. "Impossible," whispered someone on the bridge. "Thought it might have been her." The alien fleet reacted with confusion. Their formations scattered as captains tried to understand what had just happened. Ships designed for elegant space combat found themselves facing weapons that operated on principles as old as human civilization itself. "They are trying to close range," Torres reported. "Looks like they want to use their shorter-range weapons." Studied the enemy movements. The aliens were doing what any reasonable commander would do against long-range weapons. Get close enough that superior numbers and firepower could overwhelm their target. It was exactly the wrong thing to do against the Prometheus. "Activate close-range defensive systems," ordered. New weapons came online across the ship's hull. Point defense cannons that fired streams of solid projectiles. Field generators that could bend space itself. Mining lasers repurposed for combat. Each system had been designed for different situations, but together they created a defensive web that no alien fleet had ever faced. The first wave of enemy ships reached close range and opened fire with everything they had. Energy weapons hammered the Prometheus from all directions, while fighters swarmed around it like angry insects. Activated the fields. Space around the Prometheus twisted and warped as the ship's experimental generators created localized distortions in reality itself. Incoming energy beams bent away from their target, following the curved spacetime around the human vessel. Missiles found their guidance systems confused as gravity itself seemed to change directions. Meanwhile, the point defense guns opened up on the fighter swarm. Unlike sophisticated laser arrays that tracked targets with computer precision, these were simple rotating cannons that fired streams of metal pellets. They turned fighters into clouds of debris with mechanical efficiency. Enemy casualties mounting, the tactical officer reported with excitement. They are pulling back to regroup. Looked at her own damage reports. The Prometheus had taken hits, but nothing critical. The thick armor was holding. The redundant systems were working. Even the reactor was running smoothly despite powering weapons and defenses that should have overloaded it. They are regrouping for another attack, Tors warned. This time they are coming from multiple directions. Nodded, she had expected this. The alien admiral was smart and experienced. He would not make the same mistakes twice. But the Prometheus had more surprises. Deploy the mining drones, ordered. Small robotic craft launched from hidden bays in the ship's hull. They looked harmless, just simple worker drones designed for asteroid processing. But's grandfather had built them for a different purpose. The drones spread out across the battlefield, moving toward the wreckage of destroyed enemy ships. Their mining equipment began cutting apart the alien hulls, extracting useful materials and bringing them back to the Prometheus. What are they doing? An alien captain probably wondered as he watched worker drones dismantling his destroyed allies. They were feeding the ship. Deep inside the Prometheus, automated factories began processing the salvaged alien metal. Matter compilers broke down the foreign materials and rebuilt them as ammunition for the rail guns. Each destroyed enemy ship became fuel for more destruction. The second alien attack came from 6 directions at once. Coordinated strikes from battle cruisers, while destroyers tried to overwhelm the point defenses. It was a textbook maneuver that should have worked against any normal warship. But the Prometheus was not normal. Activated systems that the original designers had labeled as theoretical and experimental. Gravity weapons that crushed ships like tin cans. Kinetic barriers that turned enemy missiles back at their launchers. Weapons that fired not just metal rods, but chunks of compressed matter moving at speeds that turned them into miniature black holes. The second attack wave collapsed even faster than the first. Admiral is probably wondering what kind of monster we are, said as she watched more enemy ships retreat. Tors looked up from his station with worry in his eyes. Commander, we are using a lot of power. These weapons were never meant to be fired continuously. Check the reactor readings. They were running hot, but still within acceptable parameters. The engineers who built this ship had planned for extended combat against impossible odds. How long can we keep this up? Hours, maybe longer. The reactor has safety margins I have never seen before. Smiled, that was very human thinking. Build it stronger than it needs to be, then build it stronger than that. The alien fleet was pulling back to regroup again, but could see confusion in their movements. They were facing something their training had not prepared them for, something that fought without honor or elegance, using crude weapons and brutal tactics. Something completely human. Admiral stared at his tactical display in growing horror. His fleet of 200 ships had been reduced to 130 in less than an hour. The human vessel continued to fight as if it were just getting started, while his own forces struggled to adapt to weapons and tactics they had never encountered. Report from Squadron 12, his communications officer said. They attempted a flanking maneuver and lost 4 cruisers. The human ship somehow detected their approach and destroyed them with projectiles that appear to have been fired through hyperspace. Rubbed his forehead. Through hyperspace. That should have been impossible. Projectile weapons could not travel through hyperspace, but the humans seemed to have found ways to break every rule of modern warfare. Sir, his tactical officer said carefully, I am detecting unusual activity around the human ship. Small craft are collecting debris from our destroyed vessels. Scavengers muttered, trying to salvage what they can. No, sir. The debris is being taken back to the human ship. They appear to be feeding it to their vessel somehow. Looked closer at the sensor readings. The small drones were indeed carrying chunks of destroyed hegemony ships back to the enemy vessel. What were the humans doing with the wreckage? He got his answer when the human ship fired again. This time, the projectiles looked different on sensors. They contained materials that his instruments recognized as hegemony hull plating and weapon components. The humans were recycling his dead ships into ammunition. On the bridge of the Prometheus, Commander watched her engineering teamwork with quiet pride. The matter compilers were performing beyond their design specifications, turning enemy wreckage into everything from rail gun ammunition to spare parts for damaged systems. Reactor efficiency is actually improving, Tors reported with amazement. The automated systems are using materials from the enemy ships to upgrade our own components. This thing is learning and adapting. Nodded. Her grandfather's team had built the Prometheus to fight when surrounded and outnumbered. They had assumed that enemy ships would be destroyed during battle, and they had designed ways to turn that destruction into an advantage. New contacts on sensors, the tactical officer announced. The enemy is bringing up their heavy ships. I count 12 dreadnoughts moving into attack position. Studied the approaching vessels. Each dreadnought was twice the size of the Prometheus and carried weapons that could crack planets. Under normal circumstances, she should have been terrified. Instead, she smiled. Tors, how are our special systems? All green, Commander. The heavy stuff is ready when you are. Looked at her crew. They had volunteered for what everyone thought was a suicide mission. Instead, they had discovered they were crewing the most dangerous warship humanity had ever built. Signal to all stations, she said. We are about to show these aliens what human engineering really looks like. The 12 dreadnoughts opened fire with weapons that could destroy cities. Plasma cannons the size of buildings hurled energy at the Prometheus with enough power to melt asteroids. The impact should have vaporized the human ship instantly. Instead, the Prometheus did something impossible. It moved. Not with engines or thrusters, but by manipulating gravity itself. The ship's experimental drive bent spacetime around the vessel, allowing it to sidestep attacks that moved at the speed of light. Energy beams that should have hit their target found empty space instead. Impossible, whispered as he watched the human ship dance between attacks that no vessel should have been able to dodge. But the Prometheus was not finished demonstrating human ingenuity. Activated Project Thunderbolt. Deep in the ship's hull, special launchers armed themselves with projectiles unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. These were not simple metal rods, but compressed matter missiles accelerated by gravitational slingshots around miniature black holes. The first missile launched at a dreadnought and accelerated to 90% of light speed. When it struck, the kinetic energy release was equivalent to a small star exploding. The dreadnought simply ceased to exist, along with 2 escort cruisers that had been unlucky enough to be nearby. By the ancestors, someone whispered on the alien flagship's bridge. Fired again, and again. Each shot destroyed ships that had been considered invincible. The remaining dreadnoughts tried to retreat, but the Prometheus's drive allowed it to keep pace with vessels trying to escape at maximum speed. Commander, Tors said, I am reading massive energy signatures from the enemy flagship. They are powering up some kind of super weapon. Looked at the tactical display. The Stellar Dominion was charging what appeared to be a planet-killer weapon, something designed to crack worlds, now aimed at her ship. How long until they can fire? 3 minutes. Considered her options. The Prometheus was tough, but even it probably could not survive a direct hit from a weapon designed to destroy planets. She needed to end this quickly. "Activate the mining protocols," she ordered. "Ma'am." "You heard me. Full mining protocols. Target their flagship." Tors looked confused, but the Prometheus's sensors focused on the enemy dreadnought and began detailed analysis of its hull composition, structural weak points, and internal systems. Information that would normally be used to efficiently strip mine an asteroid. The ship's central computer processed the data and reached a conclusion that made its grandfather's engineering team look like prophets. The alien flagship was built using standard galactic construction techniques, lightweight materials, energy-efficient systems, and elegant design. It was a masterpiece of advanced engineering. It was also completely unprepared for human mining equipment. The Prometheus launched a full spread of mining charges. Not weapons, exactly, but industrial tools designed to break apart asteroids for processing. Each charge contained shaped explosives and molecular disruptors that could turn solid rock into manageable chunks. They struck the stellar dominion and began their work. Admiral felt his flagship shudder as the strange human weapons attached themselves to his hull. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then his damage control teams began reporting impossible readings. "Sir, the human devices are somehow eating through our armor. They are breaking down our hull at the molecular level." Watched in horror as his magnificent dreadnought was systematically dismantled by what amounted to mining equipment. Bulkheads collapsed. Systems failed. Entire sections of his ship simply fell apart as the human devices reduced advanced alien alloys to their component atoms. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Emergency hyperspace jump now." But it was too late for many of his vessels. The Prometheus had proven that human engineering did not need to be elegant or sophisticated. It just needed to work. And when everything else failed, humans built things that kept working anyway. The surviving ships of the hegemony's Third Armada fled through hyperspace, carrying with them the knowledge that they had encountered something completely new. Something that would change how every species in the galaxy thought about human capabilities. Something that had been sitting in a forgotten shipyard for 20 years, waiting for its moment to remind the universe that humans did not build pretty things. They built things that worked. The emergency klaxons on Admiral's bridge finally stopped wailing. Around him, his crew worked frantically to assess the damage to their once mighty fleet. What remained of the hegemony's Third Armada limped through hyperspace toward the nearest Imperial outpost. "Damage report," said his voice hollow. His tactical officer looked up from his instruments with barely controlled shock. "Sir, we have lost 143 ships, 7 dreadnoughts destroyed, 31 cruisers gone, over 100 smaller vessels eliminated. We are down to 57 functional warships." Closed his eyes. The Third Armada had been the pride of the hegemony fleet. In one day, one human ship had reduced it to scattered survivors running for their lives. What about the human vessel? Last sensor readings showed minimal damage. It appeared to be collecting more debris from our destroyed ships when we jumped to hyperspace. Nodded grimly. The humans were probably still feeding their monster ship with the remains of his fleet. The thought made him sick. "Communications," he said slowly. "Send an emergency transmission to Imperial Command. Full tactical data on the human vessel. Mark it as highest priority." "Yes, sir. What should I tell them about the nature of this threat?" Looked at the tactical display showing the pathetic remnants of his once proud armada. How could he explain what had happened? How could he make them understand that everything they thought they knew about human military capabilities was wrong? "Tell them," he said carefully, "that we have never actually fought humans before." In the Sol system, the UES Prometheus drifted peacefully among the wreckage of its enemies. Commander Sarah stood on her bridge, watching the recovery drones collect the last useful materials from the destroyed hegemony ships. "Final count, Tors," Her chief engineer consulted his tablet. We eliminated 143 enemy vessels with 0 friendly casualties. The ship performed beyond all specifications. We used approximately 60% of our ammunition reserves, but the matter compilers have already replaced most of what we expended. Nodded. The Prometheus had proven every theory her grandfather's team had proposed. When everyone else built elegant ships for civilized warfare, humans had built something for the kind of fight where elegance got you killed. Incoming transmission from Earth Command, her communications officer reported. Admiral Martinez appeared on the main screen, looking stunned. Behind him, could see other officers moving with the barely controlled chaos of a command center receiving impossible news. "Commander," Martinez said slowly, "I am reading reports that seem to indicate you engaged and defeated an entire hegemony armada with a single ship." "That is correct, sir. The Prometheus performed exactly as designed." Martinez stared at her for a long moment. "How is that possible?" Looked around her bridge at the volunteers who had helped wake a sleeping giant. Engineers and mechanics who had proven that humans did not need formal military training to fight when their survival was at stake. "Admiral," she said, "I think we need to talk about what human ships are really capable of when we stop trying to fight like everyone else." Across the galaxy, the surviving ships of the Third Armada reached the hegemony outpost at Rigel 7. Admiral's report created chaos in the Imperial command structure. Emergency sessions were called. Intelligence analysts worked around the clock trying to understand what had happened. The implications were staggering. Every previous encounter with human forces had involved ships built using alien technology, vessels designed to fight according to galactic standards of warfare. The hegemony had assumed these represented the peak of human military development. They had been wrong. The humans had been holding back. While building fleets to protect other species, they had also been developing weapons and tactics based on their own unique approach to engineering. They had created things that no other species would think to build because no other species thought like humans. 3 days after the battle, a single transmission reached hegemony space from the Sol system. It was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every species in the galaxy would receive it. The message was simple and direct. "This is Commander Sarah of the United Earthship Prometheus. 3 days ago, you attacked a remote facility containing ships that human military analysts had classified as failures and outdated designs. You destroyed none of them and lost the majority of your attacking force." The transmission continued with technical specifications of the Prometheus, detailed analysis of the battle, and complete sensor records of the engagement. The humans were not hiding their capabilities. They were advertising them. The Prometheus represents 20-year-old human engineering philosophy applied to shipbuilding. We have 47 similar vessels in various stages of development and testing. Some are larger, some are faster. All were built according to the same principle that created the Prometheus. His voice was calm and professional as she delivered the most important part of the message. For decades, human forces have served as peacekeepers and protectors throughout this galaxy. We have built our fleets to fight alongside alien allies using familiar tactics and weapons. But every ship we have deployed, every battle we have fought, has been conducted according to galactic standards of warfare. The transmission paused for a moment, letting the implications sink in across thousands of worlds. You have never fought humans the way humans actually fight. You have only encountered the forces we created to protect species who think warfare should be civilized and elegant. His final words would be remembered and repeated for generations. Consider this a formal notice that humanity is no longer interested in fighting fair. We tried building pretty ships and elegant tactics. That was for your benefit, not ours. From now on, when you force us to fight, we will fight the way we always should have fought. The transmission ended with technical blueprints for basic human kinetic weapons, field generators, and matter compilers. Not enough information to build them, but enough to prove that everything in the message was real. Back on Earth, Commander received new orders. She was to report to Luna Station for reassignment to Project Renaissance. Her new command would be the UES, a prototype vessel that made the Prometheus look like a pleasure craft. "Ma'am," Tors asked as they prepared to leave the graveyard station, "what do you think will happen now?" Looked out at the empty space where the hegemony Armada had been destroyed. Somewhere in that debris field was the proof that human engineering could match any threat in the galaxy. "I think," she said slowly, "that everyone is going to learn what my grandfather always told me. Humans do not build things to impress people. We build things that work when everything else fails." She paused, thinking about the 47 other prototype ships waiting in similar facilities across human space. Ships that military analysts had called wasteful, primitive, or inefficient. Ships that would soon remind the galaxy why evolution had made humans the species that survived when worlds died. And she added with a smile, "I think everyone is about to discover that humans have had a very long time to prepare for the day when everything else fails." The message from the Prometheus spread across the galaxy at the speed of light, carrying with it the knowledge that humanity had been playing by someone else's rules for far too long. Now they were going to play by their own rules. And humans had always been very good at games where the objective was simple survival.